Thank you for that question. Tom.
Hi. Tim Gosha from the Dolma Development Fund. We do impact investing in Nepal, actually working with Shujog to help us navigate the complexities of this world. I have a question about unintended consequences for Jeremy. You touched on that. And I think when we started out in 2003, we had the idea of absolute good, absolute impact. For example, we will build facilities in rural areas of Nepal and send rural kids to school. And then we started to realize that we're participating in the depopulation of rural villages. That's having an impact on the culture. We started to try to fix that. One slightly more extreme example is you start to put health posts in rural villages, you put the local shaman out of business. Now that may sound absurd, but the shamans are incredible cultural institutions that have been there for thousands of years. And so I've learned over time that there is no such thing as an absolute positive impact. Everything is a net impact, and we start to try to measure a sort of balanced impact and then try to do something about the negative impact. So I just wondered, from a standardization and reporting perspective, what's being done to try to measure that? I mean, is there a way in a sort of in a report that you can actually track the negative and what's being done about that?
I think we absolutely have to. You're absolutely right that this is probably one of the biggest challenges. It's the kind of how far do you go question. And the answer is, unfortunately, you have to make a judgment. I don't think that there's not a fixed answer out there for us. Actually, the language we would use around this is materiality. Is the issue material enough that you need to actually manage it and be accountable for it? And of course, if you look up the definition of materiality, it will tell you it's a matter of professional judgment. Great. And that's not very, very helpful. So our answer to that is, as a body of practice where people are making those decisions, where they're saying, well, what are the chains of events that happen as a result of our action, the positive and negative ones, which we have understood by talking to people at the starting point. And we have an understanding which is enriched about what that looks like. At some point, we're going to have to make a judgment about which ones are big enough, important enough, valuable enough, that we're going to have to actually be accountable for. That's a judgment. I think that's one of the reasons this needs that kind of external look at, that kind of peer review, if you want, which says, you've made a judgment. This is a difficult and important judgment. Is it a reasonable one? Because there isn't a scientific answer to that. I don't know what we're ever going to achieve, certainly not within the scale of resources that you would have available to you within a particular project. So we've got to have a practice-based approach where we've shared experience and we've come up, look at all these examples of situations like yours where people have done these judgments, which were seen to be reasonable, will guide your practice as well. It's not easy, I appreciate, but I think the very fact that you're recognizing these issues will mean that the investments are better, they will have less risk, they will create more impact than a set of investors who say, well, that's all too difficult, we'll just go and do the school thing because that was the bit that was easy.
I agree, thank you.
Could I just add on to that? There's a lot of work that we do in the social change space that we don't have all the information on yet, right? There are some things like access to clean water. We know clean water is better than dirty water. Use of bed nets, we know using bed nets is better than not using bed nets. So for things like that, I think it's possible to rate them and be able to appeal to the retail investor. But there are a lot of areas like what you're describing that are much more complex, and they require underwriting, which means analysis, review, due diligence, weighing the different factors. Those are opportunities that are not yet ready for retail investors because we don't know enough yet. We could get there in the future. That's why we're doing this assessment now, so that we become more informed and we share these experiences and we get a better understanding. But I think it's important to appreciate that this impact investing space, it involves a lot of activities, some of which we've done the work and we have a lot more information and it's easier to rate them and make them more accessible to different types of capital. Others, we're still really in a learning and exploration phase, and it requires a different level of analysis and consideration.
Okay, Jeremy, you're dying to say one last thing. Okay.
I mean, it may not be the retail investment bit, but I suppose one of the worries I would have is that if we invest in those things where we've solved the measurement bit, we won't invest in those things where we haven't, where there still may be a huge value or even a higher value. So I think one of the things, some of the investors we would talk to, what they're interested in is how seriously is my investee thinking about these issues? Despite the fact we can't measure it, are you putting something in place so that next year you will, or you'll be starting to address it? And I'd rather give some resources and investment to a business that we're thinking about it, well, maybe on balance, than somewhere where necessarily we've solved all the things. So that was kind of just a response.
Good, great. Well, I've been now told like 5 times that we have to stop. So, because I'm keeping you from your lunch. So let's give a big hand to our fantastic panelists. And Magnus, you're taking on? Just.
Yeah, thank you very much to everyone in the audience and of course to all the speakers. So lunch, just to point that out, will be in the other building. So you have to go downstairs to the main entrance where you came in, just outside. It's literally the building next door. Also, I would like to present on behalf of Impact Forum and Impact Investment Exchange and Impact Investment Shoe Jog a little gift from a social enterprise to each of the panelists.
Thank you so much. Fabio.